Russia has launched a massive wave of retaliatory airstrikes on Ukraine, firing more than 50 missiles after Western countries pledged more arms support to Kyiv. More than 20 rockets targeted Ukraine's capital, with the barrage of strikes persisting for some 4 hours. At least 3 regions reported explosions. Officials in Odessa say 2 critical energy infrastructure facilities were struck, causing serious power disruptions. In Kyiv, the military claims it shot down all the missiles targeting the city. Panicked residents rushed to safety in subway stations and underground bunkers. But a 55-year-old man was killed by falling rocket parts. 2 other people were injured. The strikes hit at least 1 energy facility in the capital, cutting power to parts of the region. Let's get more. Rosie Burchard joins us live from Brussels. Rosie, with that promise of Leopard battle tanks coming from Germany now, Ukraine is then asking for jets and more long-range missiles. How likely are NATO allies to support these calls?
Ukraine did get that big transatlantic green light for Western-made main battle tanks that it was waiting for. But as we know, it was not without a lot of diplomatic wrangling and arm twisting, because, of course, we've been reporting on this for days and weeks. And Germany finally yesterday got on board with what Ukraine had been asking for. And then in quick succession, the US also announced that it would be sending main battle tanks. Now, Ukraine says it needs this kind of heavy weaponry because there is this big suspicion that Russia is preparing a major offensive for the spring. It's winter here in Europe, and throughout these cold weather months, the front lines in this war have really hardened. It's been starting to look like something more of a stalemate. And now Ukrainian forces likely want to ready for a counter-offensive to defend territory and indeed to try and make gains and to regain some territory. Now, it's with that in mind that Ukrainian officials are likely trying to push this further and ask for heavier weaponry still. And of course, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has in the past criticized NATO allies for what he called hesitation when it came to sending this kind of heavy weaponry. For example, he said the time the free world takes to think, he said, is time that the invader uses to kill. Now, it's with this in mind likely that Ukraine is now pushing for these kind of heavier arms that we mentioned, so fighter jets, but also longer range missiles. Whether or not NATO nations will get on board with these kind of requests, well, that's probably more of a medium-term discussion, because what they have to do, first of all, is work out when and how they're going to get these tanks into Ukraine. We know, just announced in the last few hours, that there will be a meeting of NATO, of Ukraine's Western allies here in Brussels on the 14th of February to work on the logistics of how they can fulfill that big promise, that promise on main battle tanks that Kyiv was so loudly calling for.
Now, Russia is arguing that the West is getting directly involved in the war by providing such weapons to Ukraine, but NATO is denying this.
Yeah, we've heard Russia's rhetoric change in the past day or so, because in the past, Russia always said the West was fighting a proxy war against Moscow by arming Ukraine and accusing these Western nations, which are sending weapons to Kyiv, of essentially prolonging and fueling the conflict by sending those weapons. But now, in light of these most recent announcements of sending this heavier type of arms, these main battle tanks, Western-made main battle tanks, Russia is now saying that these countries are directly involved in the conflict. So that shift from a proxy war to direct involvement, that is something which NATO nations denied. In fact, German Chancellor Olaf Scholz was at great pain to stress that part of the hesitation, we think, here when it came to Germany greenlighting these deliveries of main battle tanks was that German Chancellor Scholz said clearly he did not want this war to escalate into a conflict where there was a direct standoff between NATO and Russia. So despite those accusations from Moscow and those accusations mounting, really taking up a gear here, that is something which NATO nations continue to refute strongly.
Rosie Burchard with the latest from Brussels. Thank you.